Good morning. I hope you enjoy my interview with Ron Weifenbach. I found Ron to be measured, funny, respectful, and thoughtful in his answers to my questions. Let me reiterate before we get started that the opinions expressed in this interview are Ron's and mine alone and are not reflective of the opinions or thoughts of my employer or Elevate Rapid City. In addition, this interview does not serve as an endorsement for Ron in any way, shape, or form from my employer, Elevate Rapid City, or myself. I think Ron would be a great mayor for Rapid City, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you. I guess I should just start. Again, thank you for being here. I know you don't know me from anyone else, and so
that's fun.
I really appreciate it.
I like giving back, and I know, Bill knows you guys, and it's just makes it easier to find someone to help participate. I don't mind participating, especially when it comes to somebody learning something or sharing my information with somebody. I think that's important. So,
well, I appreciate it. I know you didn't need to do this, so I'm grateful. So I've seen your billboards around town.
Sure.
And your slogan, at least on those, says Ron is right. Right person, right place, right time. So I guess my first question would be, do you lean right in your political views?
Do I lean right? No.
No.
You know what's funny about that? There's only about, I said, yeah, I lean some. I shouldn't say, do I lean right? Yeah, I think that I'm a registered Republican, so they would say, yeah, you lean right. But this is a non-partisan race, but I've had only 3 people ask me that. I'm like, does that mean you're really right? I'm like, no, it means I'm a right person, right time, right place. So basically, for the growth of Rapid City's hitting us hard. I mean, it's exposing all the infrastructure issues we got, exposing the crime we have, exposing the homelessness we have, and so it takes the right person. It's the right place and the right time. And you'll find that when you go through your career and you go through life, you look at, say, Bill Gates, for instance, or somebody like that. It was always about timing, being in the right place at the right time, and being the right person.
Sure.
And it's kind of like what you're going to experience when you did your hunting stuff. So no, but I probably would say I'm down the middle, maybe lean a little bit right. Yeah, I would say yeah, but also I draw a lot from other side people, the left wing people or left side people. I draw a lot from them also. I mean, they think in a different perspective. So if you got to be able to get along with them and understand where they're coming from, hopefully they'll get along with me and understand where I'm coming from. Sometimes it's just a simple. Yeah.
Fair enough. We'll stay on the billboard for a second. And this is a hypothetical question, one of my favorites from a guy I listen to from time to time. His name is Tim Ferriss. He asks a question: if you had a gigantic billboard that you knew would reach millions or billions of people, what one word or phrase would you put on it?
Trust.
Trust? Why?
Trust me. I think that when you build trust with people and when they actually have trust in you, then it opens up a whole different world of feeling between 2 people. We go through it in the community, people, going from one way, the other person going the other way. They never stop, they never understand each other, they never trust each other. But you'll find in the business world, when you trust somebody, it just makes it easier to get the job done, do what you need to do to get the things done. So
yeah. I like it. I want to talk to you about perception a little bit.
Sure.
So, do you have a sense of how the public perceives you in this race, just internally?
Sure.
And if so, is there anything you'd like to address, correct, or reiterate before they go to the polls?
Sure. I think sometimes you opened up with the question, do you lean right? And I think that may be a little bit of a perception. That may be, I'm a German guy, so I'm blunt and I'm straight and I'm to the point. So, I mean, if you want to find out what somebody don't like you, knock on their door, send them a text message that's unsolicited. You'll find out what they think of you in their heart of hearts. What I tell people is, you don't know me. I'm softer, I'm more accommodating, and I'm a good listener, and I like to find areas where we all can agree on something to get things done. I like to get things done, and I like to have a lot of conversations about things. I like to get them done, move whichever direction we need to do to get the results we want. So I think that would be the biggest thing I would tell people is don't, I try to it's kind of a curse and a blessing being a blunt person or being a straightforward person, because some people are offended by straightforwardness. So, you know, I kind of had these conversations with other people. If everybody got to know each other and know the cultures of, know the backgrounds of people, we could actually take the time to understand that other person. So that's what I tell people. I'm not as hard as maybe some people think I am. I'm more softer than that.
Yeah, I like that. I did do some reading on you, and it seems like you have a lengthy history in public service and being in elected positions. Will you talk a little bit about that and
Sure.
why you ultimately decided to run for mayor?
I can tell you that my mom came here from 1959 in Germany with my two sisters. My whole life has been a little bit about survival. We didn't have a lot growing up, and we relied a lot on our neighbors. We relied a lot on our friends' families, that type of stuff. As I grew up, I started to realize there was people that just couldn't talk. They couldn't talk for themselves. They couldn't protect themselves. They couldn't, say for instance, bullies. I found myself a lot of times, you know, trying to take on the bully, even though I knew I was going to get whipped in the end, but just standing up to people sometimes for other people. And so I took it on as, you know, I had two girls, so I seen the plight that women had in the community, and some people may say, well, that's not, you know, they may not understand it, but when you have just girls in your family, you see that. And I worked in a lot of businesses that just had females, and you can see how they were treated differently. So, and a lot of times people won't stand up for themselves. So I spent my career, my life standing up for people, speaking for people, and helping people that just otherwise wouldn't, they'd just sit there and take it. And so I kind of like stand up. I got into politics. I felt that I'm a very honest guy, very trustworthy guy. So people could put their trust in me, and I would treat them fairly, no matter how they treated me. Just treating people fairly and being honest was a big thing for me. So it just tended to be a natural thing for me to get into politics, to stand up for the people that just, you know, property rights or whatever situation they had. So
Sure. And then why, I mean, again, you've had sort of I mean, you've spent some time in these roles, so why now? Why run for mayor now?
it's the right time. Just like my billboard said.
Sure.
It's I retired probably about 5-6 years ago from my business. I had a mortgage banking business. I sold it and retired from that. And my wife and I traveled the country. We traveled the world. We're taking care of my mother and her mother both. They're still living here. So I've watched the city struggle with just pure management style decision-making processes that I'm good at. So I said the right time is because the city's growing. We have a great opportunity right now. It's a fabulous opportunity. We just need someone to come in and make some decisions, and some of them will be a little bit uncomfortable. Some of them may be harder for other people to make versus me. That's what I've done all my life. You just read on my resume, I've had a lot of experience in management, opening businesses, opening my own businesses, working for other people's businesses, being a good steward of other people's money. I take it very personally or very seriously when it comes to doing a good job, holding people accountable, but also being fair to them and having a good time doing it all. So the timing was right, and you know, I love Rapid City. I love everything about Rapid City. I love the people that are here. I like guys like you that are, you're young and you're ambitious, and you like the community. You got a chance to not stay here, and you obviously did other things, but you decided to come back. So you need people like me that make sure that Rapid City is still the great place that you want it to be. And looking forward and being able to learn from guys like me, I think it's important that we hand that stuff down.
I appreciate that. I do an exercise from time to time. I like to write and journal, and I call it zoom in / zoom out, and I'd like to do that with you here right now. When I zoom in, I take a few minutes to focus on something specific, typically something that is probably small or nagging me, or I just haven't had enough time to think about it, and I just need to really focus on it to figure out how to resolve it. I find that there's usually a quick fix or a solution to that. And then I zoom out to kind of reorient myself in the bigger picture and make sure that my aim is steady and true, and I'm moving in the right direction. So with that in mind, if elected mayor, what is something you feel is a nagging issue that with some focused effort you would work to resolve immediately?
It's funny you say that because I do the same thing. I don't journal, but I zoom in and I zoom out. I'll take some time when I come across an issue, and I'll spend a lot of time with myself. I'll pray about it, and then I'll spend time thinking about it. And one of the things that I think is a nagging issue for me that is what I call low-hanging fruit items, but the first one that people don't recognize is the level of communication. That's feedback back and forth between the citizens and the administration of the city, which, if it's handled properly, brings a whole new perspective to the community. Because if you can make people feel part of a decision-making process, if you can make them feel part of a community, if you can get them to know you, the synergy and accountability and everything that goes along with it that you get from that is amazing. So basically what I'm looking at is I want to involve the community more. At the beginning of our conversation, we had to talk about people that don't vote and all that stuff. And some of that stuff's probably not realistic, but what is realistic is making it very simple for people in the community to have contact with what's happening at City Hall. There's other cities that have great websites that are technologically driven. I mean, we will have to shift around resources to make this work, but for young people that we're driving into our community, it's very important. They're connected on their phones, they're connected on their computers, but where they're not connected is what's happening in our city. There's other cities that you'll be able to, like, say, GeoGrid type, where you draw a circle around your house and you want to know what's going on in your neighborhood. You'll get text messages, you'll get emails, you'll get information that comes to you. It's, oh, there was a car wreck down the street, or there was a drug bust down the street, or they're building an apartment building down the street. All this information will come to you, and you'll feel like you're part of it without having to actually, we complain a lot about, oh, people don't get involved. Well, in today's world, there's no reason for people not to get involved with technology. And it's one of the nagging things that I spend a lot of time zooming in and zooming out, because it doesn't necessarily get you votes. But it is something that I know that when I bring it to the community and we start to practice it, other than, the things that get you votes right now are the high, high crime, the potholes, the homeless things. All these we can approach too, and those will be priorities. Yeah. But in the end, in the background, when I'm zooming in and zooming out, I'm figuring out how to bring this connectivity to the people in our communities. So.
Sure. Well, so I guess before we zoom out, I've heard it said before that most people overestimate what they can do in an hour, a day, a week, or even a month or year, but underestimate what they can do in 2 years, or in this case, 4 years. So what is something that will take a while to resolve or to get done, but you would like to complete prior to the end of your term?
Okay, that's a valid question, because it's true. People do overestimate, and what I'm telling people is within the first 12 months, you'll see I'll be picking the low-hanging fruit. We'll be handling the pothole stuff. Well, hopefully we can get on top of that right away. But in a longer picture, it's going to be building the foundation of the city. Building a foundation where when a new manager comes in, this is something I had to do in the private sector, was when I'd go in and I'd start a business, and for an entity, say for the company I was working for, and they wanted to start businesses below them, they would bring me in, I'd start the business, and I'd hand it off. So basically what I want to do is hand off the city in a good condition, better running, better managed, better understandings. We'll have the technology, we'll have the potholes fixed, we'll start with the planning of the streets, we'll start planning in our landfill, and all these other departments will have plans laid out. So when the next person comes in, they'll be able to take these things and just like building what my projection is to build a foundation. Yeah. And maybe so then the next person that comes on can build on top of that foundation without having to really spend a lot of time trying to correct things that maybe we should have had paid more attention to in the past. So it's like building a house, basically. If you build it with a good foundation, and then you can build the rest of the house, it'll last longer. So in one of them we talked about was the technology issues, but also just planning in general, getting out ahead of the infrastructure, planning ahead, imagining what our city could be, imagining from a perspective of a 30-year-old man, saying, okay, if I'm going to live in Rapid City the next 20 years, I wasn't just born as, an old guy, 60 years old. I was your age at one time and had dreams, and I had visions, And so we, the people in charge and the administration, need to think that through. We need to bring people like you to the table. We need to bring the people with the wisdom to the table and say, how do we see Rapid City? Let's imagine, if I could imagine from a young man's perspective or a young woman's perspective, and I wanted to raise my family, what could I imagine it being? And that's where I want to leave it when I leave.
So you've already started zooming out on this. I can already tell that you're headed in that direction, but I would just take it one step further. So as you zoom out, what is the aim of your candidacy? And what is your guiding principle that you'd use to orient yourself during your time as mayor?
Okay, that's my guiding principle is to just make sure I'm fair to everybody and make sure I'm accountable and do a good job and be a good steward. So, and be myself. I really definitely have spent a lot of time standing in my own lane in this campaign. I want people that vote for me to know who I am. I don't want somebody to think I'm somebody I'm not, because that won't do us any good when we move forward. When I call upon someone to help me, we have so many people in our community that bring something to the table. And if they can't trust me, then they're never going to bring it to the table. I'm not going to take people out and say, hey, this guy did this or this guy did that. I want them to be in a trusted environment that they can go, hey, what we're looking at doing is what's best for the city. I have no special interest in the game. I don't need a job, but I feel like we talked about earlier about giving back to the community. This is my time. This is the time that I can really make a difference in our community. I can get us on track. I can transition us through moving from a large town to a small city and realizing some of the dreams that people have dreamed about for years. I remember years ago, back in the early 2000s, we sat in a room probably about this size and with a few other leaders in the community. And we were a lot younger, that about 20 years ago. So, and we dreamed about a technological corridor on downtown in between 5th and School of Mines. And there's still people today. I got an email from somebody from the School of Mines said, hey, I'm on this technology corridor task force thing. And I'm like, man, this is something we dreamed about. These things are starting to come to fruition. And so I want to see them through. I want to make sure we stay on top of them, that we don't lose, we don't lose those people. We gain those people because they have so much to offer. So
yeah, I like it. We have Ellsworth Air Force Base here in Rapid City and Box Elder. Now, I'm from Sturgis, and our mascot is the Scooper. And I don't know if you've ever heard the backstory to this.
I can't imagine, but go ahead.
Now, the story that I was told growing up is that we had Sturgis, but you also had Fort Meade.
Yep.
And right outside of Sturgis. And at the time, as the town was coming together and growing, the soldiers were the only ones who really had steady pay. So they would get paid and they'd come into town and the citizens would cater to them to try and bring them into their businesses and things of that nature. The soldiers called them scoopers because they thought they were trying to scoop the money out of their pockets. And I tell that story not to say that we're trying to do that to our airmen and women, but we have a growing Air Force base here. The B-21's coming in. And so setting aside any politicking between Rapid City and Box Elder and looking at ourselves as more of a greater area, what message would you like to give to our current and incoming airmen and women?
First of all, I appreciate their service. I served 8 years in South Dakota Army National Guard. When I was in Fort Leonard, it was a little town called Waynesville. They probably thought, we probably thought they were scoopers. It was back in the late 70s, early 80s. But the airmen coming into town, this is what's cool about it, is a lot of them end up staying here. If they stay here for a long period of time and they retire here, they love it here, they want to stay here. And during the time that they're here, we want to support their mission. Rapid City, like you mentioned already, and you have a pretty good handle on the fact that we're a community. Rapid City is like the big brother to the community. We want to help this Ellsworth Air Force Base with a B-21. I was on the council back when BRAC hit, and actually no, I was in real estate business. I was in a mortgage business. I owned a mortgage bank, and BRAC hit, which was they were going to close the Air Force Base down. Senator Tom Daschle was the senator at the time, and John Thune was running against him. John Thune got elected, which saved partly, gave credit to him to save the Air Force Base. But that period of time, was the only period in time that I seen the economy of Rapid City go flat.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, but the citizens, they put together a task force, and there was several great people on the task force, and we fought to get Ellsworth off that bracket list because we knew the value that it brought to our community. Not that it only bring great people and great families, but a lot of times their spouses will work, you know, whether the male or female spouse will work or their children will work, they'll bring, yeah. But the numbers that they bring for revenue to this city is almost too hard to even fathom. But when you live through it and you see what happens when there's a chance if they're not going to be there, it was tough. Number one, we were losing a bunch of good patriotic people, and number two, we were losing a big economic engine from our community. But we embrace. I took a lot of my Black Hill State University classes. I took on bass because I could get on the bass, so I took a lot of my night classes there when I was working full time, and so you get to know a lot of people, and I've made a lot of friends in the community that are still here. So it's a big deal for us to have the B21 and have Box Elder and work with Box Elder. You know, they've got some difficulties now that we can work through with the water and those types of things. Rapid City has the capacity to help them. We need to help them. We need to work with them. We need to embrace them. They're part of our overall community. Rapid City without Box Elder is not the Rapid City we know today. I mean, together we're way stronger though. So.
I think some of my questions you've actually answered, but one thing I want to go to is something you and I discussed before we really got started. This mayoral race is not just two candidates with one heavily favored. You know, there's 5 candidates, and as I've listened and read the discussion that's being held, it seems that it could come to a close finish. Let's just say that this is the case, and it comes to a close finish, and you end up becoming Rapid City's new mayor. How do you approach that potentially widely spread vote, and whether it's unify Rapid City, or how do you address that wide vote?
I agree with you, and we had that conversation a little bit, and it's a winner take all. With the first time that I've ever experienced a winner take all. I'm not excited about that scenario because there could be a mayor that wins with, you know, less than 25% of the vote. I know that if I win, that I definitely will have that feeling of, okay, if it's 25% and 25% of the people voted for me, it just gives me that much more willpower to show those other people that I am the right guy to do this. I will work as hard as I ever would, whether I had a runoff or not had a runoff. So I'm comfortable with it. I don't really like it, and I think that I would make the moves to try to get the council to relook at it and change it. I don't think it's the best way to do business because there's a lot of information to gather about a lot of people. I believe I'm the best candidate. Obviously, my resume and my qualifications, my experience, my know-how, and just the ability to get things done is, in my mind, far outweighs everybody else. But if you're just watching snippets of, like, say, forums or commercials or whatever, people can say whatever they want to say in those time frames. But if you're actually going to sit down with somebody and have a conversation such as we're having, you see the real differences. You see that I'm a guy who's committed to this. I don't have to do this. I want to do this. I love Rapid City. I love the people that are here. I love guys like you. I love guys that, I mean, I have friends from the loneliest guy on the street to some of the most wealthiest people in the community, and they all bring value to the table. And so knowing that I could win with not a lot of percentage of the vote, still win, doesn't excite me, but at the same time I'm going to live with it, and I'll do the same job I ever would do. I'm going to be the same guy. Even the people that don't vote for me or didn't support me in the campaign or whatever, I'm still going to be here for them. There's no doubt about it. Because as a mayor, it's a nonpartisan. So first of all, Democrat, Republican doesn't matter. Secondly, a lot of people don't even vote, but I'm still going to be their mayor. So, and a lot of people won't vote for me, and I'm still going to be their mayor. That's exactly what it comes down to for me. So.
We've talked about a wide scope of things, and so I guess let's just go to one last kind of hard-hitting question here. I know it's hard to narrow it all down, but the single biggest problem that Rapid City has right now, what is it, and how would you address it if you became mayor?
If you look at the single biggest problems from communicating with people in the city, it's crime. That's what they see as the biggest single problem. So my approach to this would be is we're going to recruit more police officers. We're going to train them. We're down about 20. We have 16 in the pipeline that we're going to work with. But once that happens, we're going to put more police officers on the street. Okay, they're going to be on the bike paths. They're going to be in the downtown areas. They're going to be walking around bicycles. They're going to be more proactive. We're going to start to do more warrant type searches. We'll get with the probation officers and say, hey, we know these, because a lot of times these guys that are committing the heinous crimes or the more violent crimes are repeat offenders. So if we can get some of these repeat offenders before they actually hurt somebody or rob somebody or these types of things by simply getting with their parole officers, because I think a few years back in 17 or 15, I can't remember the exact date, they passed a bill in the legislature that went soft on crime a little bit. They were trying to reduce the criminal population. But when they did that, they made promises to the city that they were going to give more parole officers, they were going to add more addiction recovery centers, and they were going to add more people with mental illness. They were going to add more resources for that. But they did none of that. So what they did is they shoved the whole problem back down into the municipalities and the counties. We've got a new sheriff in town, and I've had conversations with the sheriff and the chief. They're all on board with what we got to do. We got to crack down on these repeat offenders. The sheriff has eliminated 100 federal prisoners out of our prison. We were harboring federal prisoners in our prison because we were getting paid, so it was filling up our jails. The new sheriff has eliminated 100 spots in the jail. He is preparing to change the way we do business. And it's going to be uncomfortable for people for a while, but we're going to look at different smaller opportunities too, like looking about, we're going to be watching more carefully. We're going to probably put some gang task force together, put some proactive policing that we haven't had as much of before. Right now we have some proactive policing in North Rapid. It's at a limited scale. We're gonna ratchet that up in the community, and we're gonna ratchet up across the community. And we're gonna start questioning people when they're out walking around at 1:30 in the morning with backpacks, checking car doors and these types of things. It's kind of like the broken window effect. If you have a broken window in your house and you don't repair it, eventually the house just starts to deteriorate, the neighborhood starts to deteriorate. It's the same thing we're looking at with crime. We have had some challenges with all these parolees and parole absconders because the parole agents they've never replaced them all. They've been leaving, there's not as many of them, they're overwhelmed with work, they can't get to it all, so we gotta ramp that up, and then we also gotta ramp up what's happening in prosecution. You probably noticed that the state's attorneys have changed. We have another lady who's committed to actually prosecuting. So she's gonna be prosecuting. So as she prosecutes, these people are gonna be being incarcerated at different levels than they were over the last, say, 5-8 years. So we're gonna try to get these repeat guys to start being accountable for what they're doing. And then the lower level of crimes and stuff, you'll notice in the streets there'll be more active traffic control, those types of things. So if you guys are out there speeding, be careful because they're gonna be looking for you. But because a lot of these smaller things actually find people that have warrants for their arrest and stuff like that. And these are the guys that are committing these crimes have been down this road several times. It's not like they just started to go out and commit a murder or something. And these guys have been down the road a few times. So we're gonna try to put a stop to that as soon as we can. And we're also gonna look at the juvenile justice system. And I know this isn't, people will say, well, the mayor can't do all that. Well, I disagree, because the mayor of Rapid City is the mayor of the second largest city in the state of South Dakota. You have a bully pulpit, basically. In hierarchy, you look at the governor and you look at the mayor of Sioux Falls and you look at the mayor of Rapid City for guidance and leadership. And so we have to be on top of it. We have to be involved in the county level and the state level we have to be involved. We have to be vocal for our people in our community. If you love Black Hills, you love the community, as the mayor, you're responsible for what happens in these areas, and you have to make sure that everybody else knows it. And they made these promises. Well, let's bring them to fruition, because we're going to start, fixing the broken windows.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a gift for you. You said you don't write, but this is it's not some big fancy gift, but
No,
that
but
is
I just appreciate you taking the time
yeah.
to be involved. And thank you. I appreciate that. I'll use it. I mean,
I hope it helps you to zoom in and zoom out.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, here's what I'm doing if I zoom in and zoom out. I go to the Flying J restaurant, and I bring my notebooks, and I sit and I think things through, and it's like, okay, how could we see this? How could we perceive this? And then I get on my phone and start calling people that I know have interest in those areas, or they're good in these areas, and how do we look at this? How do we do it? We've got, I can't even tell you the talent that we have in our community, from the young people, from the people that have retired and have big jobs and big businesses. You see it, at your bank. You see these guys come in, and don't ever take these guys for granted. They've been there, they've done it, they get it, and they have your best interests in heart too, because they want someone that comes in behind them and fills in, behind them, and so that's payment enough for me that you're excited about the community, that you're taking a leadership class, that you're thinking about it, and you're thinking, okay, this is what makes these people tick.
Yeah.
What makes one leader different from another leader? Those types of things are important, because if you just take it for granted, you say, I've heard people call people low information voters or whatever, that people that, but they have their place, and they don't want to come to the table like you do. So you're gonna have to be that next generation of leaders that says, I'm gonna watch out for these guys. I'm gonna watch out for these people that enjoy their jobs and work hard, and that's what they want to do. They don't want to be put in the limelight. They don't want to have people send them nasty messages and or call them names and tell them they don't like them when they don't even know you. That's what I appreciate.
Well, it's actually a perfect tangent, because I want to read something to you just to end it. And again, this is in thanks for coming today, and also what you're doing with running for mayor. I'm sure you've probably heard this before and you're familiar with it, but I want to read it to you, and that'll kind of bring us to the end here. It's the Man in the Arena speech by Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay.
He said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat."
That's good.
Thank you for coming.
No, thank you.
Thank you for being here, and I appreciate your
I appreciate
your
it, man.
efforts.
That's a great. You did awesome on your questions. I wish that people would, ask those questions like that more often. I mean, the forum questions are kind of softball type style questions, as far as I'm concerned. I like getting into the, hey man, you need to think about this question, because, this is going to show your character how you are. But I like that quote. That's cool. It's true.
Yeah.
Sometimes, going through what I'm going through, you don't think about it. Sometimes you wake up and you go, you look around and go, man, okay, I'm fighting this fight, and I fight to win, obviously, and if I don't win, I'm gonna put up a darn good fight and hopefully bring enough value to the table that people look at it and go, okay, maybe he had some valid points, but so.
Well, thank you very much.
No, thank you, man.
Appreciate it.
God bless you, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate this.
You bet.